You had Fields at 10 and Dak at 9, Ziggy. What was the reasoning behind that? I have Fields at 6.
So Justin Fields certainly is a lot of rushing upside, and people are really excited about that, and fair enough. But you look at the numbers last year between Dak Prescott and Justin Fields. Now, Dak Prescott had one of the worst years of his career. But large parts of Justin Fields' numbers, as much as like 85 points of his 300-ish fantasy points, came from 2 games in weeks 9 and 10. And after those games, on a points per game basis, Dak and Fields, right? Dak having the worst season of his career as a starter, and Fields having his alleged breakout. The difference between those guys was 1.5 per game.
That's crazy.
It really wasn't huge, right? If Dak cuts back on the interceptions a little bit, if we see the McCarthy passing offense flourish, as it probably will, and if you don't see Fields take a big step forward as a passer, you know, it's nice to have DJ Moore being able to bust a 60-yard touchdown on a screen in the preseason. But they need Fields to really improve. If he doesn't, all that rushing upside won't amount to much, and you're not going to see a super strong offense around it.
Okay. Now I can get behind that. I didn't realize how close they were late in the season like that. I like Dak to rebound. I have him as my quarterback 12. I have Fields at 6, though. I don't know how much he really improves as a passer, and you're right. In order for the Bears to make any noise, they need him to elevate his passing game because, frankly, it hasn't been there. And I know Bears fans will get mad and say, no, of course he can throw the ball. But no, it hasn't been there for Justin Fields. And until he does that, the Bears as a contender are non-existent. Fantasy-wise, though, I can't ignore the rushing impact. He had the second greatest rushing season ever last year, 1,143 yards. Between weeks 6 and 15, Ziggy, Justin Fields was on pace for 1,712 rushing yards. I mean, that's a crazy 8-week span that you have right there. But you're right. Until he passes better, you can't elevate him too high on this list. He has potential, though, with DJ Moore now, Darnell Mooney, Claypool, the offensive line's improved. Everything's there for him to take that jump. And if he does, boy, if you could get him in the 5th round, 4th round, you're not using those super high picks like you would for the other quarterbacks. Yeah, that's another way you can win your league.
Dak used to have rushing upside. His first 3 years in the league, he put up like 1,000 yards and 18 touchdowns over 3 years. Sadly, not anymore.
Yeah, I was taking a look at comparing Dak and Kirk because I actually have Kirk at 11 and Dak at 12, which people will probably be mad at. But Dak Prescott, 182 rushing yards. Kirk, of course, we know doesn't run at all. He had 97, but that was a closer number than I think most would expect, a 90-yard difference between the two of them there. Okay, next up on our list, we have 9, Deshaun Watson. And I know you're high on him bouncing back this season. Last year, he struggled. He was 22nd in fantasy points per game once he came back. But remember, we always talk about this. For 3 straight years before his suspension, 5th in fantasy quarterback rankings. So if you can get that Deshaun Watson coming back, and he looked good early in the preseason so far, you're flirting with someone who has really high potential.
Yeah, I mean, you can go back and watch our Browns preview show to hear what I think about Deshaun Watson. I really think he's going to take a big step forward this year and return to the old guy.
You have him at 7 on your list. Do you see top 5 potential again for him? You think he could sneak up in there?
There's certainly top 5 potential. Again, I say this over and over again. There are very few quarterbacks in the NFL that have shown they can play at a top 5 level over multiple seasons. Dak's just one of them. Or Deshaun Watson's one of them. Yeah. Dak's also one of them. But Deshaun Watson's one of them.
That'll bring us to 8. We have Trevor Lawrence. A lot of hype around a breakout season for Trevor coming into this season. The final 7 weeks of last year, he was a top 6 quarterback in fantasy football. But then again, he also had 6 finishes outside the top 20. So you got a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde with him. Top 10 in pass attempts, completions, yards, touchdowns, rushing attempts, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns. He's in his 2nd year now with Doug Peterson. Calvin Ridley enters. This feels like a guy who could be on the verge of a year 3 super breakout and become a superstar in the league. I'm fine waiting on the first 3 guys and going and trying to get a Trevor Lawrence. What about you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, he had 5 rushing touchdowns last year. Basically, every stat a quarterback can have, he improved at.
Yep.
Like, all Trevor Lawrence needs to be good is a functional offense and functional coaching. Well, he's got the functional coaching. And with Calvin Ridley, he's going to have an even more functional offense. I think there's no reason not to have him as a top 8 quarterback this year, and he could do more.
All you had to do was remove Urban Meyer, and you see what Trevor Lawrence is capable of.
When you do not have your coaches physically beating up on injured players, things improve.
And I misspoke there. 7 weeks as a top 6 quarterback for Trevor Lawrence. From week 9 on, he was QB5 in fantasy. So, again, a lot of potential. We'll see if he lives up to it. At 7, as we said, Justin Fields. We'll skip that, and we'll go to Justin Herbert now as our 6th quarterback. 2 years ago, Herbert was the QB2. So a big fall last year. I have him in our Dynasty League that Ziggy and I play together. He was the QB11 last year. A little disappointing. But you have to remember, week 2, he broke his ribs. Keenan Allen was out. Mike Williams missed some games as well. Nothing went particularly to plan in Los Angeles last year. I think that we could be looking at a big bounce back if everyone stays healthy in Los Angeles, because Herbert, to me, is a top 5 quarterback in the league and one of the most talented in terms of a pure passing ability. So I like a bounce back from Herbert, and you seem to agree.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with Dak Prescott coming off the worst season of his career, the Chargers said that's the guy to run our offense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they did. But I like Kellen Moore, though. He's not bad.
What was needed for Kellen Moore, that was hater Ziggy speaking. Here's more positive Ziggy. Kellen Moore and Dak, that relationship had run completely dry. Both of them needed a change of scenery. Herbert needed a change of scenery too, in the sense of he needed a new offensive coordinator. Things were just not working. I think there's a lot to look forward to here. He's got weapons all around him. He should finally be allowed to throw the ball more than 10 yards in the air.
Quentin Johnson in the draft, like you said, more weapons, new weapons. And part of the reason for the drop-off was 38 touchdowns 2 years ago, only 25 last year. You had 300 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns 2 years ago, 150, 0 last year. So just, again, I blame part of that on the injury. I blame part of that on not having everyone there for all the games. It's a big if, but you could be looking at another guy with top 5 potential. So I'm fine. We talked about this before. There's Justin Herbert, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. Those 3 make up probably the tier 2, unless if you want to say that Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts are the tier 1. I think that it's fine to wait for one of those 3 guys and not reach early for a 2nd or 3rd round quarterback. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, if people in your league are overexcited and take quarterbacks in 13, 14, 15, and there are still elite players available to you dropping, absolutely. Okay. And I do want to emphasize, as he said, Herbert suffered that rib cartilage fracture last year. Yeah. It feels like people don't remember that, but I remember watching that KC.
It's amazing. Game. Yeah.
He couldn't move. Somehow he was throwing the ball 80 yards and then couldn't walk. Yeah,
no, that game was
played through a tough
crazy.
Injury.
Yeah, Justin Herbert, tough dude. I like him there as our QB6. At 5, we have Lamar. You have him at 4. I have him at 5. We had the same top 5, though, in general. Look, the rushing ability is always going to be there from a fantasy standpoint. A couple of years ago when he was MVP, or a few years ago now, I believe he set the record for quarterback rushing yards. He's never finished below the QB2 in rushing yards since entering the league. But here's what I want to say. I had Lamar Jackson last year, and he had some big weeks. He started the year off incredibly hot with a 39 and a 42-point performance. If you take those games out, the other 9 games he played, he averaged just 17 points per game. It was a lot of waiting for Lamar to break out again, and he never did it. So I'm not super thrilled with drafting him. I get that they have Odell now. They have Zay Flowers. Todd Monken should come in and speed up the game. I'm a little hesitant to draft Lamar because of what I saw last year from him. But when Rashad Bateman played, he was in those 3 games, QB8, QB1, QB1. And the rest of the year didn't really have much to throw to. So why do you have him at 4?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, he needed Rashad Bateman to be unlocked. Well, now he's got Rashad Bateman, and he's got Odell Beckham Jr., and he's got Zay Flowers, and he's got Todd Monken bringing in a good offense. We talked about how Herbert and Dak needed a change in offensive coordinator. More than either of them, Lamar certainly did. Greg Roman is an incredible running game coordinator, but he's just, for the modern NFL, he's just not the guy you want running your offense. The Ravens have brought in Monken. He should bring in a functional passing scheme that'll still utilize Jackson on the ground. I think that Lamar is finally going to get to show what makes him such a great quarterback.
Oh, so you're seeing a big season. Sounds like.
Yes.
Okay. And then at 4, we have Joe Burrow, 4th in fantasy points last year. 9 top 10 weeks for Joe. We know one of the best passers in the league. He actually added on. He's no lower than 8th in quarterback carries, rush touchdowns, and carries inside the 5-yard line. You got a sneaky contribution on the ground from Joe Burrow. And then, of course, you have the weapons that we mentioned, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, even Joe Mixon there. While he doesn't present the rushing threat that really any of the guys in the top 5 present, I mean, Mahomes sort of. But, yeah, Joe Burrow, I'm fine with him at the 4th spot. And do you have anything to add on him, or should we go to top 3?
I would say it tells you how good a passer he is, that he is a competitor. Many people think he's like a top 2 quarterback in the league, despite not offering anything on the ground.
Yeah.
Just an incredible player. He's going to produce this year.
Yeah, he'll produce. And then a lot of people are calling them the big 3, Josh Allen, Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts. What order do you have them in, Ziggy, and what was your reasoning for that?
Yeah, so I had them in Hurts, Allen, Mahomes, sort of the same order that comes up here. I mean, look, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. He's the best passer. He's a strong scrambler. He'll get you touchdowns in the air. He'll get you touchdowns on the ground.
And Ziggy, I'm sorry, you have Mahomes, meaning Mahomes at 1, right? Mahomes
yes.
1, 2, Allen 3, Hurts. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I want to rule out Mahomes belongs at 1. End of story. Don't even question that.
Oh, I question it.
You can't. He's consistently great.
No, he is. He's amazing. Led the league in fantasy points last year. I actually have Josh Allen in the top spot. In any order that you put these guys, I'm fine with. It's just we talked about the UCL injury last year, but on top of that, the rushing ability of Josh Allen, over 700 yards on the ground last year. I think he'll throw for even more touchdowns and actually reduce the interceptions. You can talk me into any of these guys. I'm just feeling another big year. I think we could be looking at an MVP season from Josh Allen. But yeah, and then Jalen Hurts, just to mention him, most fantasy points per game last year, 25.2. He led all quarterbacks in carries with 165 carries for this guy and 13 rushing touchdowns. I don't think he repeats that number, but once they're inside the 5-yard line, a lot of times he'll get the carry, and I wouldn't be surprised this year if they continue to do that. Despite the success he had last season and wanting to protect your quarterback a little bit more, I'm not sure. But yeah, Jalen Hurts was amazing. He won people leagues. So he won my dad a league last year because you could get him late.
The only thing I'm concerned about with Jalen Hurts, we've only seen one good season out of him.
Yep.
So of these guys, he is, I think, the biggest possibility to be a bust.
I agree with that for sure.
The Eagles clearly don't expect that to happen. I don't expect it to happen. They're a very good team.
No one expects it,
great.
And he's been playing great in training camp. All signs point to him having very similar success to last year. But I have him at 3, just a little reduction in those rushing touchdowns. But again, you could convince me if you put him 1. So there you have it. For quarterbacks, Dak, Deshaun, Trevor Lawrence, Fields, Herbert, that's your 10 through 6. Lamar, Burrow, Hurts, Allen, Mahomes is our top 5. Ziggy said, can't have anyone except Mahomes at 1. So listen to him. He knows what he's talking about.